The sun had barely started its climb above the horizon when Melissa pulled out of the driveway, her hand loosely wrapped around a travel mug filled with lukewarm coffee. It was one of those quiet mornings in the suburbs where everything felt too peaceful, too still, like the calm before something unexpected. Her husband, Sheriff Tom Caldwell, had already left hours ago, responding to an early call. Melissa had planned to stop by the grocery store before her volunteer shift at the animal shelter. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day, but fate had something else planned. Dressed in jeans and a simple cardigan, Melissa didn't look like the wife of the county sheriff. She never liked to draw attention to herself. Her husband often joked that she could blend into any crowd like a ghost. That was the way she liked it. No fancy badges or name-dropping. Just a quiet life helping people and staying under the radar. But as she merged onto the highway, her life was about to collide, violently, with someone else's ignorance and unchecked authority. A few blocks away, Officer Bradley Jenkins leaned against his cruiser, sipping his energy drink and eyeing the traffic. He was new to the department, a transfer from a neighboring county, and had already built a reputation among some locals, though not for the right reasons. He had a chip on his shoulder, a hard gaze, and a tendency to escalate situations far too quickly. He often claimed he could read people just by looking at them, but his assumptions often came from something far more dangerous than intuition: prejudice. As Melissa's car approached a stop sign near the main strip, she noticed flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Confused, she slowed down and pulled over. Her registration was up to date. She wasn't speeding, no broken lights. Still, she eased her car to the side of the road and waited, puzzled. Officer Jenkins strutted toward her vehicle with the swagger of someone trying to prove something. His hand hovered dangerously close to the holster at his hip, even though the scene before him posed no threat. "License and registration," he barked through the half-lowered window, eyes narrowing as he sized her up. Melissa kept her voice calm. "Of course, officer. Can I ask why I'm being stopped?" He didn't answer right away, just stood there, studying her with a look that seemed to search for a reason to be angry. "Step out of the car," he said abruptly. "Is something wrong?" she asked, now more confused than concerned. "I said step out," he repeated, this time with a sharpness that startled her. Before she could even undo her seatbelt, his hand gripped the butt of his gun. For a moment, time froze. The sound of birds in the trees faded into silence. A cold fear crawled up her spine. She had never seen a gun pointed at her before, let alone from a man who was supposed to protect the community her husband swore to serve. But even then, Melissa didn't scream. She didn't raise her voice or challenge him. She knew that sometimes the wrong word could turn a tense moment into a tragic one. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt, hands raised slightly. "Please," she said softly, "this is a misunderstanding." "You think you can play me, huh?" Jenkins snapped. "Something doesn't feel right here. Who are you, really? What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I live here," she said, holding back tears. "I've lived here for 15 years. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled, and in her eyes something shifted, not fear, resolve. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every woman who had ever been treated like a suspect for simply existing. Every wife, mother, or daughter who had to explain themselves for no reason. Every quiet person who got caught in the noise of someone else's hate. "I want to speak to your supervisor," she said firmly now, but still without aggression. "Oh, you want to play games?" Jenkins scoffed. "Think I won't cuff you right here?" Melissa stayed silent. She didn't need to play games. All she had to do was wait, because in a few minutes, everything would change. Elsewhere, in the heart of downtown, Sheriff Caldwell's phone buzzed. Dispatch informed him that one of his officers had pulled over a civilian near Ridgewood Avenue. Routine stop, they said, but something in the way they described it made Tom uneasy. He recognized the make and model of the car. It was Melissa's. A cold knot formed in his stomach. Back at the scene, Jenkins was growing frustrated. He couldn't get a read on her. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't crying. She wasn't backing down either. But she wasn't scared the way he expected. That unnerved him more than anything. "You think you're better than me?" he muttered. And then, something in Melissa's eyes shifted again. This time to something unmistakable. She looked him straight in the face and said, "I'm the sheriff's wife." He blinked. For the first time since the stop began, his confidence cracked. Just a flicker, but it was enough. "You what?" he stammered. "I said, she," repeated calm as ever, "I'm Sheriff Caldwell's wife." There was no drama in her voice, no triumph. Just a simple truth dropped like a stone in still water, and the ripples it caused would spread far and wide. Jenkins stepped back, face draining of color. He looked down at his hand, still hovering, near his gun, and then at the woman who had just turned his world upside down. His silence screamed louder than any argument. But before either of them could speak again, the sound of a second patrol vehicle filled the air. Sheriff Caldwell's SUV turned the corner like thunder rolling through the street. Tires crunched gravel as he pulled up, jumped out, and locked. Eyes with the officer who had dared to point a weapon at his wife. And just like that, the balance shifted. Meanwhile, across town, something very different was unfolding. Something that would soon intersect with Melissa's story in a way no one expected. On a crowded city bus, a black teenager named Jamal stood up to offer his seat to a pregnant white woman. A simple, quiet act of kindness. No cameras, no applause. Just instinct, just decency. And yet, what happened next would echo across two lives in a way neither could imagine. The woman looked at him with stunned gratitude. She wasn't used to people seeing her. Not like that. Not with kindness. As she lowered herself into the seat, she handed him a note, folded, small and trembling, between her fingers. Jamal looked confused but smiled politely and tucked it into his jacket pocket, unaware that inside was a message that would change everything. But before we get to that letter, let's go back to the street where the sheriff had just arrived. Where silence hung in the air like fog. Where a man with a badge had just realized he pointed a gun at the last person he should have, and where a woman, calm and unshaken, stood not as a victim, but as a reminder of how quickly power can collapse under the weight of truth. The question now wasn't what would happen to Officer Jenkins. The question was, what should happen? And, as Sheriff Caldwell stepped between his wife and the man who threatened her, the real story was just beginning. Sheriff Tom Caldwell stepped out of his SUV slowly, every movement deliberate. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't even reach for his badge. He just looked straight at his wife and then at Officer Jenkins. The morning sun cast long shadows across the street, but the tension between the three of them was heavier than anything the light could chase away. "Melissa," Tom said softly, walking toward her. She gave a small nod. "I'm okay. For now." Tom turned his gaze to the officer, whose posture was stiff, like he didn't know whether to stand tall or shrink into himself. His hand now dangled awkwardly by his side, far from the holster it had been hovering near moments ago. His lips parted, like he wanted to explain something, but the words never came. Tom didn't speak to him. Not yet. He turned back to Melissa, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Did he hurt you?" "No." "But he could have," she said plainly, her voice still steady. That was all Tom needed to hear. Not because she was his wife, but because she was a person who'd just been treated like a threat instead of a citizen, by one of his own. "Jenkins," Tom said finally, his tone unreadable. The officer straightened up like he was standing for inspection. "Sir, I don't," Tom cut in, his eyes sharp now. "We'll talk later." "But Sheriff, I didn't know." "I said later." Jenkins swallowed hard, his face reddening, but he didn't say another word. He stepped back, avoiding both their eyes. Melissa exhaled slowly. She wasn't interested in seeing Jenkins squirm. What upset her more was the realization that if she hadn't been the sheriff's wife, she might have ended up in handcuffs. Or worse. That same fear, that same sick feeling, could have happened to anyone. And that thought lingered heavier than anything else. As Tom gently guided her back to her car, the silence between them said more than words. This wasn't just about this morning. This wasn't just about one bad officer. It was about something deeper, something that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Meanwhile, across town, Jamal sat quietly on the bus, staring out the window, the note still crumpled in his pocket. The moment with the pregnant woman had passed quickly. She had gotten off a few stops ago, thanking him again with a warm smile that lingered in his memory. He didn't think much of the note at first. Maybe it was just a thank you. But something about the way she handed it to him, the way her eyes had filled with emotion, made him curious. He waited until he got off the bus and stepped onto the sidewalk near his school before unfolding it. The paper was small and worn at the edges, like it had been handled many times before it reached his hands. The handwriting was neat, careful, like someone who took time with their words. At the top it read, "You don't know me, but I know exactly who you are. This small act today saved more than just my body. It restored my faith. Please read on. There's something I need to tell you." Jamal blinked. He read it again. His heart began to beat faster, not in fear, but in that strange way it does when you know something big is coming, something real. The rest of the letter continued, but he folded it back up before he finished. His mind was spinning. He needed space to think. Back at the sheriff's office, Tom called Jenkins into his private room. The door clicked shut behind them, the sound echoing like a drum beat in the quiet hallway. "Sit down," Tom said, standing by the window. Jenkins hesitated, then sat, clearly nervous. "I'm going to ask you a few questions," Tom said, "and I want you to answer honestly. Do not lie. Do not guess. Do not justify. Just tell me the truth." Jenkins nodded, sweat beading at his temple. "Why did you pull her over?" Jenkins cleared his throat. I thought her car looked suspicious. I didn't recognize it in the neighborhood." Tom turned slowly, fixing his gaze on him. "You mean you didn't recognize her in the neighborhood?" Jenkins flinched. "Sir, I didn't mean anything by it. Did she break any traffic laws?" "No." "Did she behave in any threatening manner?" "No." "Then explain to me, without lying, why your hand was on your weapon." Jenkins opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw tightened. "I guess I misread the situation." Tom leaned closer. "You didn't misread it. You assumed. You profiled her." Jenkins looked away but didn't deny it. Tom stared at him for a long moment. "Do you know how close you came to changing not just your life, but mine, hers, and this entire department's?" Jenkins said nothing. "There are going to be consequences," Tom said. "This isn't just a mistake, it's a pattern. You've been warned before, haven't you?" Jenkins stayed silent, but his expression answered for him. "I can't protect you," Tom said, "and I won't." Outside, Melissa sat in the front office watching the comings and goings of officers through the glass door. Some of them glanced her way, a few smiled awkwardly, but most looked down. She wasn't there to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But the truth was, sometimes people should feel uncomfortable. That's how change begins. And yet, even with all this unfolding, Melissa's mind kept drifting to one thought. How many other people had gone through this? How many never got to say, "I'm the sheriff's wife," and walk away safe? At the same time, Jamal sat in his bedroom with the letter spread open on the desk in front of him. His fingers traced the ink, his eyes scanning the words again and again. "I've been working for a company that supports kids like you. Bright, respectful, and full of promise. When you gave me your seat today, it reminded me why we fund those scholarships. I didn't know if I'd keep donating, but you changed. I mind. There's a name at the bottom. Contact them, tell them I sent you." There was a name, a number, a company